All right, today we're going to explore a radically different way of looking at mental health. This is a framework that goes back thousands of years. We're going to unpack a Buddhist perspective on the mind and, what happens when things start to feel a little off. So, yeah, let's just dive right in. Now, think about this. We hear a lot about chemical imbalances, right? Or genetic stuff. But what if the real problem is something else entirely? What if it's not about the brain's hardware, but about the software of our own consciousness? That's the big question our source material is asking us to think about today. To really get this, we need a whole new metaphor for the mind. So forget thinking of it like some kind of static machine. I want you to picture your entire life, your experience as a continuous, flowing stream of consciousness. Everything you see, think, and feel is just floating by in this current. So what is this stream actually made of? Well, in this framework, consciousness isn't some passive thing where you're just aware. No, it's an active process. Your mind is constantly reaching out, fetching signals from the world, sights, sounds, thoughts, feelings. And in this view, these are called objects of consciousness. Okay, so within this stream, we have a couple of really important tools. The first one is mindfulness. You can think of mindfulness as being like a flashlight that shines on all the different objects floating by in the stream. Its whole job is to light them up, these thoughts, these feelings, so we can see them really clearly for what they are without all the extra judgment and distortion. And working hand in hand with mindfulness, we have concentration. So if mindfulness is the flashlight, concentration is like the focusing lens. It lets you zero in on one single object in that stream to really hold your attention on it, understand it deeply, and then figure out the best way to respond. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating because this framework explains mental illness in a whole new way. From this perspective, all our mental suffering, it all comes from when this process, this stream of consciousness, gets messed up. It's not a broken brain, you see, it's a troubled stream. And this table just lays it out so clearly. Take a look. Depression, that's seen as the mind just constantly grabbing those painful objects from the past. And anxiety? Well, it's the exact same process, but it's grabbing worries about the future. OCD is when the mind just latches onto one object and can't let go. ADHD? Not giving an object enough attention. Even something like bipolar disorder is framed as the mind flipping its response to an object into the complete opposite. You see, it's all about how the mind is interacting with these thoughts and feelings in the stream. So the key here, the really crucial point, is that the root cause isn't seen as some chemical issue you just fix with a pill. It's a functional problem. It all comes down to the quality of your consciousness, how well it's actually using mindfulness and concentration to navigate that constant stream of thoughts and feelings. Now, to really see this idea pushed to its absolute limit, let's take a look at psychosis. In this framework, psychosis is pretty much the ultimate breakdown in how consciousness is supposed to function. Psychosis is what happens when the stream gets so troubled, so chaotic, that the mind starts to confuse its own internally made objects with what's actually real. And this leads to all of it, the delusions, hearing voices, holding beliefs that just defy all logic. According to the source, this is an extreme state of delusion where the mind literally cannot tell the difference between what's floating in the stream and what's standing on the shore. So if the problem is functional, right? A breakdown in understanding, then the solution isn't a pill. The solution proposed here is actually a specific type of knowledge, a deep insight into what our thoughts really are. And this quote from the Buddha is everything. What he's telling us is that the objects in our stream, our thoughts, feelings, perceptions, they are not solid. They're not real, permanent things. They're fleeting, they have no substance, and ultimately, they're kind of an illusion. Let's just break that down for a second. Our feelings are like a bubble of water. They appear for a moment and then, pop, they're gone. Our perceptions are like a mirage in the desert. They look so real from far away, but when you get closer, there's nothing there. And consciousness itself is described as a magical illusion. The whole goal is to start seeing our thoughts this way, not as these concrete orders that we have to obey. I know, this all sounds really philosophical, maybe a little out there, but the source actually lays out a very practical path for putting this into action. It's really about training the mind to get better at its own job. So, how do you actually do that? Let's look at the steps. And here it is, the proposed solution in 3 pretty clear steps. It all starts with the practice of mindfulness meditation. And the goal of that practice is to directly train those 2 key skills we talked about earlier: mindfulness, and concentration. And as those get stronger, the overall quality of your consciousness, the clarity and the stability of that whole stream, it improves right along with them. Now, the source gives this whole practice a specific name, Yanaso Manasakara. You can think of it as a special kind of learning routine for your mind. It's about wisely paying attention, about tracing those unwholesome thoughts back to where they came from, and seeing for yourself that they're just an illusion. And that's what ultimately brings the mind to a state of real calm and serenity. And that kind of brings us to our final question for today. This whole framework, it's a profound challenge to how we normally experience the world. If our thoughts and our feelings really are as fleeting and as illusory as a mirage or a water bubble, then what's left? What should we actually trust? And what does that mean for how we live inside our own minds? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.